This is Mommying While Muslim, recorded live and unedited. Watch as Zaiba and Uzma record their podcast, see their reactions, and find out for yourself what all the buzz is about.
This episode of Momming While Muslim is brought to you by 786 Cosmetics. At 786 Cosmetics, we believe that beauty products should be inclusive and designed for all to enjoy, regardless of spiritual or ethical beliefs.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Momming While Muslim podcast. This is Uzma Joffrey.
And this is Zaiba Hassan. How you holding up there, Arizona? I gotta throw that out right now.
On the
What's
edge
up?
of
What's
my
going on
seat,
with
literally.
you guys?
Nothing. Luckily, those horrible motorcades with the illegal giant flags for Trump and Pence blocking our traffic are not there. I think they have quieted down because maybe they're seeing the writing on the wall. I'm not sure. But yeah, how have you been?
Like everybody, waiting on the edge of our seats, just thinking about it. I don't know how many times I can watch the same thing. And then 250 votes just came in and we're like, why is this grasping our attention so severely? But, this is democracy working. And that's why I do love America. And I'm so proud to be an American today, regardless, because this shows that our democracy is working. And I believe normally we have our little chit chat, but the reality is both of us have been doing the same thing, right? Doing our mommy duties, sitting and watching whatever news channel that you can possibly do, in watching CNN and just really focusing on what's going to happen and where the country is going to go from here. So I know you guys are definitely in one of the states that we're waiting on. I keep joking because, depending on what news channel outlet you're listening to, Arizona has not been decided as of right now. I know you guys do a different election system. So do you want to talk a little bit about that before we get into our generic soapbox? Because I'm trying to understand how you guys work, because I think your state does it a little bit differently than our state does.
I don't know how our state does it differently.
Don't you guys just do mail-in ballots?
No,
you don't know?
No. You can also go to the polls. Absolutely.
So let me ask you this: why didn't you guys go to the polls? Like, what the heck is going on?
So because of COVID and because of the number of people voting this year, I think what America did, and just for what it's worth, I think it seems like we're just jumping in to today and talking about the election because it's really all anybody can talk about right now. Our title today is denial. Yeah. Is that what we're doing, or are we doing a recap? Because I thought we were just going to talk about non-election stuff and like how your week was, but it sounds like you've only been thinking about the election.
Yeah, I haven't done anything else. Like you must. Well, I know you had a fun way of getting away and like, but though the rest of us that didn't get a chance to like go listen to the beautiful waves of the beach in Los Angeles. No, sucker, I am just watching this. So yeah, you can go ahead and give your recap, because I'm pretty sure it's better than mine.
Yeah.
Because quite frankly, I've been eating a lot of carbs and then hiding under a blanket and literally watching that stupid ticker tick, tick, tick. But that's it. So you tell us then, okay, we're going to just start from scratch. You tell us what you've been doing and we can live vicariously through you.
Yeah, no, I mean, it wasn't a vacation. I know I posted pictures of myself on the beach escaping from all of this madness that's going on in our country because I knew what was happening. So Tuesday, we arrived at the beach at the places that are normally teeming with life. And it was empty and it was being barricaded, like wood, plywood is being put up on
On the
storefronts
windows.
all up and down Santa Monica Promenade, because they were expecting looting. And it was obviously empty because people were still at the polls in California, given the time difference between that and the East Coast, right? Just by a couple of hours, I think. And so it was completely empty. We were there not for fun or just to get away. Getting away happened to be a very nice side effect, but we were there getting a second opinion on Wednesday at LA Children's for my daughter. So
Got it.
it was technically a work visit. Um, but with the advantage of my husband said, you know what, let's just go listen to the ocean for a while because there's going to be so much
No.
noise all over the country and really all over the world because all eyes are on us right now. So that was great. And, for inquiring minds, we got really good news at LA Children's that, we're on the right track for our daughter and there's nothing more that they can add, which is the best news you can get, right? Is that you're already
It is
doing
the
everything
best
right for
news.
your kid.
Alhamdulillah.
Thanks for coming, but we can't offer you anything. That was actually really good for us. So, yeah, coming back, obviously on the road, I was doing what you're doing and carving up at any stops that we made because it was like, okay,
Oh
now
my
it's
God.
time to focus back on our country. So why don't we just kind of introduce? We had okay, I take that back. I had planned this entire month for Kubler Ross's stages of grief because I thought we would know very clearly, very
By
quickly within
now.
24 hours of our election what was happening. So this month is about denial, anger, depression, and grief. And we were going to go through those stages as we came to terms with who our president was inevitably going to be. And now that we don't know, as of this recording, it is November 6th, Friday. We don't know yet. And I still think we can record based on those titles. However, I think denial means something more than what we
A little different.
originally
Yes.
planned for. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. And Zeba had already calmed me down so much last week. Apparently didn't take her own advice and stress ate during the election, but calmed me down a lot. Because what did you say to me last week about the election, Zeba?
I said, there's no point in us thinking about it right now because guess what? It's not going to be decided. And we're going to be waiting for a
Exactly.
long time. And part of that reasoning is because of COVID and because of how a lot of people, decided to go ahead and put in their vote, whether they were in person or voting in person or doing the mail-in ballots, which I know you guys did. But I know a lot of people decided to do mail-in ballots, including my own in-laws. Like we definitely recommend it because they're elderly, and they always vote. We're like, please do vote, but make sure you send it in mail-in ballots. So I do think that this election is a little bit unique from that perspective because we do have this huge inundation of mail-in ballots, right? Which is what is going on right now, depending on whether or not your state does or accounts for in-person early voting or mail-in ballots, which is why you saw such a huge sway, whether Biden was winning at one point and then all of a sudden the mail-in ballots are coming in and now he's winning, or whatever the case may be, depending on what states decide to do it in what sequence. And a lot of the states that we're waiting on right now, the mail-in ballots are opened and counted after everything else. That's the in-person and that's the in-person early voting. So that's kind of where we are at now. So because I had that inclination that there's going to be this huge influx of mail-in ballots, just because I know the Democratic Party was definitely pushing for that, I just had a feeling if they were going to do it properly, which it seems like they are, that those have to be opened and scanned and counted. And guess what? That takes time. So I am not surprised
Mhm.
that it's Friday, November 6th, and we do not have a president.
And, again, record numbers of voters this year. I think it's like over 70% of registered voters
Mhm.
voted, voted, which is a record breaker, right? And what I was explaining to some other folks who were, upset about just tell us already, I was like, listen, our population is a lot bigger than it was when we were kids. When we were kids, we pretty much knew that night who our
Mhm.
president was. So we had fewer people living here, we had fewer people voting, um, gerrymandering and all of that and voter intimidation. I mean, the 80s was still on the heels of Jim Crow, right? And so a lot of Black people
Mhm.
did not vote. A lot of people of color did not vote in this country because they had seen, like, when we tried to, they beat us. So they did not. And a lot of voter registration movements, non partisan movements, have gotten people registered, gotten
Mhm.
people to declare a party. So more numbers means more time. A more populous um, voting body means that we do need time to record it. And because of, as Zeba said, the COVID restrictions and people being more careful, they decided not to go in. And in many states, and the ones that we're waiting on right now, the state recorder cannot, or the county recorders cannot start counting early ballots
Mhm.
until election day is over and the live in person who showed up at the polls votes are counted first,
Are done.
and then everything else comes. So we're still waiting on provisional ballots. We're still waiting on absentee ballots. A provisional ballot was placed by people who maybe didn't have the right ID, for whatever reason. I'm not sure why I didn't get a ballot, but here I am, and they have to go back and verify that these people are real voters and not dead people, as we're being accused of counting absentee people who are gone from their place, and have sent in a vote that way. And then for, you know, people like myself, early ballot voters who got it like a month, 2 months. I think mine came in September, or late September. And I went and I physically put it in the ballot box early, but it's not going to get counted until around now. And that's what's happening in the largest
Mhm.
county in my state. Um, but there's people like my mother-in-law who also had an early ballot and was placed in the mailbox. And we have the little alerts. I don't know if y'all have them in your states, but you
Mhm.
can sign up on your text to say, oh, was my vote counted? Which means, did you receive my envelope? And as of Tuesday, my mother-in-law still hadn't arrived or hadn't been counted. So I think it's in the
Mm.
process of, and so that's why we just need to be patient and wait, because every vote matters, every voice matters, and everything that is received needs to be counted, especially those mail-in ballots that were postmarked by November 2nd.
Yes.
Those aren't arriving, especially if they're coming internationally, until today or tomorrow. So we don't know. And then we have North Carolina who's saying that for whatever reason, they might not even get results until November 12th. So I feel like all the hullabaloo and all of the stress is unnecessary. And again, Zabo was like, don't worry, there's going to be a bazillion and a half lawsuits to recount and it's going to be contested.
Yes.
I think you thought it was one sided. I was thinking it would come from both
Yes.
sides. So that's why I
Mm-mm.
figured, okay, enjoy the beach and just stress and, eat carbs because it's fun, not because I needed to stress out over the election. But I think there are legitimate reasons for us to have to wait right now, and I'm okay with it.
Yeah, because this just tells us the truth of the matter. Like when people say your vote doesn't count, we're down to like in the thousands, right? Where there's a
Georgia,
discrepancy or a
1,000 and
difference.
change.
1,000, yeah, and so your vote does
Mhm.
count. So the reality is that when people are like, "My vote doesn't matter," in elections like this, your vote counts, and we cannot take it for granted. Like, as women, we did not get our right to vote till 100 years ago, and, and I just feel like you have
In
the right,
America.
and we have in America to do that. Yes, thanks for the clarification. And I stood in line for 2.5 hours with a nun behind a 98-year-old nun behind me, where we were helping her with her chair, only to find out that she was voting for Trump. But anyways, I still did what I had to do, because it doesn't matter which side of the spectrum you're on, you have the right to exercise your right to vote, and you should definitely do this. So what we're doing right now is watching the democratic process actually work for once and we need to have the patience to do this. But I know that we're talking about right now the stages of grief, part one, denial. And I know you wrote this. I was probably a little bit more positive than you were, but you wrote this with the thought that
You were.
this is going to happen. We're going to have another 4 years of this. But we're going to be talking about denial for a very different reason. And I have to say, I think both Uzma are probably on the same page as this. But do you want to take on why we're going to be in denial for a very, very different reason?
Yeah. So what you are reading and what you're hearing on the news right now is about, and what you will hear next week when this episode is finally published, and inshallah, we will know who our president is. Um, I think what we keep hearing is that Biden flipped this, Biden flipped that, Biden. No, when you have counties where the difference between the two candidates is in the thousands, is in the hundreds, where,
Hmm.
he's leading by point something percent, for all of those, I'm going to say it, white liberal women, a lot of you are our allies, but you think that this is Biden flipping something, that something magical is happening in our country. And I feel like you need to look at, why is that difference so narrow? Have we been in denial?
Hmm.
And I think even I have, thinking that if, if by some miracle something happened and we only had a one-term president, that the majority of human beings that we live with in this country believe that his behavior was bad. And when you have such slim margins, the truth is the majority of people couldn't care less how he
Don't think
behaved
that
and
way.
how he literally took the statesman model, or the model statesman, and obliterated it, and made it okay to make fun of all kinds of marginalized people, all kinds of institutions in this country that we've held valuable. And I think that white liberal view is, it's got these blinders on. It's like you've had tunnel vision that you think our country is somehow getting better. I argue that no, it's just
Mm-mm.
exposing the ugliness that has been there all along, that you and I have grown up with and we knew was here, but the
Mhm.
last 4 years have brought it to the forefront. And now we're seeing it in numbers, quantified in front of us. What do you think?
No, this and this is funny too because I have a bug just flapping in my eyes right now. But I normally don't post when one of my friends on Facebook is, you know, posting anything. And there was one particular meme that I've been seeing consistently that really kind of bothered me. And essentially it was a cartoon. And I probably should have sent it to Joe to pull it up, but it was essentially a cartoon saying, it was cut in fours, and it was like a kid in cages and a couple of other things, essentially saying like overnight, miraculously, that stuff is going to stop if
Right.
Biden gets elected, right? And for people of color, for people of a different religion, we all know it doesn't matter whether you have a Democratic president or a Republican president. Some of these things already happen, and I know this is not a popular thing. Like I think President Obama, like a beautiful orator? Is he handsome and looks cute? Yes, absolutely. I'm just going to say that. But some of the problems with ISIS and Syria and all these types of things, if you actually do your research, started with him and under the
Hmm.
Democratic president. So we know the truth. We know that if Biden becomes, is he better than Trump? Absolutely. Things are not going to miraculously change overnight. And to be in denial, right, of the things that happen under even Democratic presidents tells me as a person living here that we're just not going to be able to move forward until we actually understand what's going on. And it doesn't matter whether you're Democratic or Republican. So for people of color, I'll argue, for Muslim people, when somebody said, well, kids were in cages, yeah, that sucks. But guess what? They were putting Muslim men in cages right before that.
Way
So
before
like
that. Hmm.
we already had experience of that. And I love my, my white sisters. Like, I love what they're trying to do, and I love that they're trying to be informed of things that are happening. But this goes on decades, and this is not going to change overnight. And the fact that we had such a huge election, like, this is probably in history one of the largest turnouts that ever happened, and the margins are this slim, tells me that you don't care that this person did all the things that he did. The first time around, you don't know. You're kind of like, he's a maverick. And by he, I'm talking about, Trump. He's a maverick. Maybe he's going to say something or do something different. So I can even understand why you might have voted for him the first time around. I don't agree, but I can understand. But knowing what he has done, the hate he has spewed, the mockery of the democracy system that he is doing right now, and you still voted for him, shocks the living bejesus out of me. Have we been in denial this whole time that this is what your neighbors think about you? And you're just quietly keeping that to yourself? I just can't understand it, including a third of Muslim voters. A third of Muslim
Oh, we'll
voters
save that for next week.
voted for him.
When we're talking anger,
Oh
let's
my
talk
God.
about that
Okay.
next week.
Sorry.
But
I'm
yeah,
still in
more on
denial. My
denial.
denial went straight to anger. Can you see my face getting red?
Yeah,
My
no, it
denial
does
went
make me
into
angry.
anger because I don't understand it.
Yeah. I feel like we need to dismantle the denial because up until now, I was still thinking that, my liberal friends who are not Muslim love me. But 1 out of 3 of them have shown on the polls counted so far that that is not true. They probably still suspect me. They probably still believe in some utility of a Muslim ban and of kids in cages. There's probably, there's a reason for those things, and those reasons are legitimate. And it makes me wonder, these people who have laughed and cried with me, were they just blessing my heart the whole time? And for those of you who aren't from Texas, bless your heart is a nice way of saying F you politely. And it's said with lots of sugar and lots of blinking of the eyes and looking innocent, but it is a sarcastic way of sticking it to you. And have all of these people who I thought were my real friends, who I thought were my real neighbors, actually, where I live now is totally a Trump neighborhood. So no. Well, with like 2 exceptions, myself included. Uh, I don't believe that these neighbors literally like me. But the bigger circle of my friends, it makes me wonder, like, who amongst them are authentically on the side of morality? And that's what we're arguing, right? Like, if we're looking
Hmm.
for a moral compass for this nation, which was the better choice? And by that, I mean, which one was the
Yes.
lesser evil? Because as we have said, the Democratic Party is not a friend to normal people, normal Americans, and certainly not to Muslims. Their international policies, I mean, even under Hillary Clinton, terrible, terrible. And what we will say is that their international intervention was very selectively against Muslims. And so I can see when we talk next week about why some Muslims voted the way that they did. But in the meantime, it's just I'm feeling like from this point forward, I'm going to be suspicious of all of my self-proclaimed allies because again, the numbers say that they're not.
No, you're 100% right. And I feel like, when I was carbo loading, is how I euphemistically describe it, and hiding under the blanket, it was that I was focused on. It was, you say to my face, I'm your friend. I want to help you. I'm part of your village. But to your point, a third of those people are not really there. Like, would they say
Right.
something if my kid, was out of line for them, like, and I voted, not based on taxes, because let's be honest, you and I, we're in that demographic where we're paying a lot of taxes, okay? We just are.
We
We're
pay a
probably
lot.
paying a lot more than a lot of people listening right now. We pay it, plus we do our sadaqah, plus we do our charity work because we feel like that's the best thing for our society. So I'm not going to make a decision when I
Plus, we do this
vote based
podcast, which is
on
total
that.
sadaqah.
Which is so, and we pay for it out of our own pockets. Okay, let me just tell you that right now. Other than today, today has been brought to you by
Alhamdulillah, happy to do
786
it.
Cosmetic. Happy to do it.
Yeah,
But
bismillah.
the reality of the situation, Bismillah. But the reality of the situation is we do our fair share. But I'm not going to vote on economic party lines. I'm going to vote on how are you treating other members within my community,
Mhm.
whether or not I have a connection to them. They don't have to be Muslim. They don't have to be in my area. They don't have to be in my. We all have a right under the basic premise of the Constitution, right? And my thing is, I'm going to vote under those party lines. If someone is talking about, whether or not I agree with abortion or not abortion, because we had that conversation a couple weeks ago, I don't believe the government
Yeah,
should be involved. I just do not think that they should be
right.
involved. And that is where I'm just gonna focus on, like, who is the I can't even call it a better person because you never know what goes on behind closed doors, but who is going to bring back the
Mhm.
decorum of what America means to
Thank
the
you.
world, to the nation? That is what I want back. I don't want somebody over there that's he's literally crying and tweeting like he's on acid. Like somebody just said he's like on acid, like because he's mad that he's losing.
The only reason I'm losing is because the votes are being counted. Stop counting the votes.
Yes, stop counting the
That's not
votes,
how
and that's the
democracy
point. You
works.
can't do that. It doesn't work. And I have to say, like, who was that?
Yeah.
George Bush. Like, I have to say, I was not a fan of his. Okay, George Bush Senior. But I heard a letter. I heard something on the news this morning where when Bill Clinton beat him, he left in the Oval Office in the desk essentially like a note that says, you're our
Mhm.
president. We will have to do, and it was just so gracious and same thing with George Bush Jr. Again, when Obama he wrote this beautiful note saying "Good for you." There has to be this peace in transition because the American public is looking looking to you for leadership. And Trump is not a leader.
Mhm.
He's just not. He
No.
is like, I'm not a doctor, you are. He has narcissistic personality disorder. God knows what other delusional things. There's something physically wrong with him. I feel badly for him that he's in this prison of his brain that he just cannot function properly. But the truth of the matter is, like, it's just terrible. Like, I feel like I look at him when he's giving speeches. I'm like, you are just totally in denial about this whole thing. And I just feel like we're going to be in lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. Oh, yeah, Joe
Well,
wanted
I
me to
think
read this. This is what he's do you wanna
oh,
read the note that George Bush left for Bill? Because I just thought it was so beautiful.
okay. And I think it is traditional for the outgoing president to leave a letter like this for the incoming president. And I
Mhm.
don't know which president started that tradition. This is from George Bush Sr. Dear Bill, when I walked into this office just now, I felt the same sense of wonder and respect that I felt 4 years ago. I know you will feel that too. I wish you great happiness here. I never felt the loneliness some presidents have described. There will be very tough times, made even more difficult by criticism you may not think is fair. I'm not a very good one to give advice, but just don't let the critics discourage you or push you off course. You will be our president when you read this note. I wish you well. I wish your family well. Your success now is our country's success. I am rooting hard for you. Good luck, George. That is presidential. That is decorum. That is good sportsmanship. that is a Republican president writing to a Democratic president who's coming in. And I think it's so important and so poignant. Did I like George Bush Sr.? Heck no. I don't think I was old enough. Oh, yeah, Bill Clinton was the first election that I voted in. I'm sure that was the same for you, Zeba. And so I voted for him because I was
I
so
mean, no,
done with
I
George Bush,
not
Bush Sr., right?
no,
Weren't
I
we old enough
wasn't.
during Clinton? I remember because I voted for him because he was cute.
92, 96.
It was before the blue dress.
God. Then
Before the blue dress.
so we
Um,
so no, we
but
you have to go back and do your math, honey. You were not old enough, but you probably voted for him in like some sort of school poll. Because I know I was like in
oh, maybe it
7th
was a school.
grade and I voted
No,
for him the
Clinton.
first time on a piece of paper. It was probably a school poll.
Oh,
92 and
maybe it was a school
96.
poll. You're right. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. You're right. You're
I
right.
was like,
Definitely
"Are
didn't vote
you
for him in
trying to date us,
'96. Yeah.
girl? Because that is not." Yes, I was like, "That's
No,
not
we're not that
happening."
old.
But I was like, "I'm not that old." But you know
But
what?
so
But I
here's the
did think he
thing.
was cute,
I
and you
was a
wrote it. You
Republican.
wrote over. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm from
President of the
Texas. It was like
Republican
always
Students
Republican growing up, right?
Association. Mhm.
Yeah, you were diehard from the Midwest. I'm from the South, so it was
I was diehard
expected that I would
Republic.
be a
Yeah.
Republican. But like I was done with that party, but I was so proud of the way George Bush Sr. conducted the office, not how he executed his duties and executed,
Mhm.
a bunch of Muslims during the Gulf War. But, I think it's just this is what we want as an American people, like you said, a role model, somebody for the world over to look at, not someone who shoves other world leaders out of the way at global summits, who like spews
Mm-mm.
hatred at global leaders because those have political and economic consequences for the American people. And I just think that, voting him in showed what a bleh. I'm trying to create a word. It's not working. A corporateocracy that we are, because capitalism is so much more important to us than democracy, and economic philosophies and political ideologies are completely different, and we're mixing them up in this country. Like, we have been so
Mhm.
hell-bent on socialism is bad that we decided to vote on that, so afraid of taking care of our neighbor. And as Zeba and I said, we actually stand to lose a lot of money and potentially status if things change. But for us, voting your conscience means voting in the way God would want us to. And in Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, remove all the oppressors. Do not be an oppressor. It is one of the worst things you can do. And oppression can happen in many ways. You don't have to like put somebody in a cage alone. You can also economically oppress them. And that has happened for decades in this
Mhm.
country. And we as Muslims on the outside of the process looking in, we don't have just glass ceilings. We've lived in glass cubes because we've been left out of a lot of conversations growing up. And we saw this progressively happen. But what this process the last 4 years has done is unlidded the truth of this country, which is that the majority of the people do not vote their conscience because their conscience says it's okay for there to be a 10% that owns everything and that runs everything. We have allowed the smarter people, the richer people, because rich must mean you're smart. Well, I hope the last 4 years has shown you that that's not true. You know,
That's not the
we've let this
case.
happen. Yeah. How do we undo that? How do we now face this uphill battle of widening the margins, making it very clear what is white and black, what is, okay and not okay in this country? Because, I mean, there's so much work to do, Zeba. And I think people are thinking that this win is it. Like, we're in the game if
Yeah,
it
no.
happens.
If this win happens, and again, this is a big if, we don't know, we won't know, and we do not know at the time of the recording. It's just the beginning of a process because the last 4 years for me personally has opened up, like you said, unlidded the box. It's like, what is that Pandora's box
Pandora's
of
box.
how
Mhm.
people yeah, it was the p and put we've opened up the Pandora's box about how people are actually thinking, what they're motivated by.
Mhm.
We're seeing the dark underbelly of, some of our neighbors. That's the truth of it, some of our neighbors. The
Yeah.
loss of white privilege, that's what we're talking about right now, the concept of the loss of white
That's what's at
privilege,
stake, but I don't think it's
and
lost
the
anywhere.
that's what the I don't know. That's I feel like the motivating factor, this perceived loss of white privilege, like the
Mhm.
inherent I'm owed something for being this, and somebody
Mhm.
else is doing that instead of me, and the inability to
Mhm.
I think adapt to modern society is really what the issue is, right? Like we know that it's not the loss of white privilege; it's the inability to adapt to modern society, and that you're just not going to be owed something because of the color of your skin. And again, we can talk about that at length on another day. But what's going on right now is this is just the beginning of a conversation because we are so wounded as a nation. We're going to have PTSD, I think, for the first term of this presidency
Oh
anyway. And
gosh.
part of that is, and part of that is, in my opinion, is to bring get other people of color, other ideologies. We're too extreme in both sides of the spectrum, and the reality is everybody's in the middle. And I feel like everybody should have a seat at the table, and perhaps we should reward that and exercise the option of being different than everybody else. Like you talk about socialism, but the reality of the situation is 90% of the people don't even actually know what socialism is, what it actually means, what
Right.
it means for the country.
Right.
And nobody is trying to say we're going to be socialists. But what we are trying to say is if I have five sandwiches to eat and my neighbor has zero, I should give my neighbor a sandwich so that it's not going to hurt me. I still have four
Mhm.
sandwiches, but now he has
As a
one.
Muslim, you
It's
have to give that
okay.
neighbor a sandwich.
Literally. So I feel like that's not
Mhm.
socialism. So, and I think that socialism has gotten like, a bad term. And you know this, like I was the president of the Republican, Students Association. And I feel like the current Republican Party is not what it's not the Abraham Lincoln's Republican Party. Let's just be real about that. And
Mhm.
what's going on right now is this shift in our community. And to your point, we have to start working together. And how do we do that? I don't know. I don't have the answer for that, but I do know we have to do it because our country has been so divided, literally almost 50-50 at this point,
Mhm.
and we need
Right.
to fix that. Otherwise, we cannot move forward as a community.
Yeah. And I don't know
I'm
how that's
done.
going to work or what that's going to look like in the political process. Because like you said, nothing's going to change overnight. So what is going to be
Mm-mm.
like the most important stuff to overturn? Because if each incoming president just comes and undoes what the last president did, as we saw in the
Yeah.
last year, that's not
Hmm.
progress. That is just little boys fighting in the sandbox, and we don't need little boys
Hmm.
throwing poo at each other anymore. Like that's not the way politics is supposed to work. It's supposed to be each president lays a foundation for the next president to have success. And I'm saying president, and I'm sorry, I should say the nation. Each president lays the groundwork
Hmm.
for the nation to succeed with the next president. Okay. So that we only
Right.
get
It
better. When we
should
know
be.
better, we do
That should
better.
be the
Like that's what
case.
we say here. Yeah.
Yes.
That's what should be happening, not I'm going to hire all of my besties and make sure that all of my besties
Mhm.
make more money. Follow the trail. Betsy DeVos has gotten millions of dollars. Her brother's gotten millions of dollars in the last 4 years. And if you don't follow the money trail, and like we said, Zeba and I are we know what's happening with some finances, not just personally, but we know where to look, nationally, what is happening. That is a travesty. That was not draining the swamp. That was jumping into it. And hey, let's go to
Mhm.
town and have a ball, because the general public is not savvy enough to know what is at stake, and what the political lobbies have done to the integrity of our democracy. They have destroyed it. We've been talking out of both sides of our mouth. The Democratic Party has been doing it forever, but oppression anywhere threatens injustice. Wait, injustice anywhere threatens justice everywhere, right? You can't pick and choose, you know, who you
Mhm.
bomb and who you don't. If a tyrant is usurping things from its citizens anywhere, it is our job as the greatest nation on earth, and as the I guess we used to have a lot of say in the UN. I don't know if that's the case anymore. In the last 4 years,
Mhm.
it's been so crapped up. We're supposed to intervene. And the last time we made a significant difference and saved Muslims from oppression and from tyranny and concentration camps was during Bosnia. That was a hell of a long time ago. And how long have the Uyghurs been suffering? Like, we've known about this for so many years. How long has Syria been suffering? We've known about it for so many years. And two different administrations have failed to make a difference. We know one nation that is an occupied territory and just unhoused over 400 families this weekend, but we don't do anything about it because we don't operate from a base of from a moral compass. We do it based on what is good for our bottom line and what makes good publicity. And we can't do that anymore. We really, as a country, need to figure out a way of spreading justice to everybody, spreading prosperity to everybody, not just on our shores, but abroad. Because if other countries do better, shoot, we do better too, guys. That's how it works. And if that's socialism, hey, I'm okay with it, but I get why some people are scared of it because they didn't pay attention in history class, or maybe they paid attention, too much attention, and only hear Lenin when they hear socialism, when they don't know what a society that cares about all of its social needs, that cares about Maslow's hierarchy and taking care of people's health care, food, and security. If you could do that, then you can start building political processes on it because people can't see past, I don't have food on my table. If you don't give me that
Mhm.
sandwich, I can't care about your economic policy. I can't care about your healthcare reform. My mind is not able to wrap around anything further than my hunger, than my lack of healthcare right now. Can we fix that? And then I will go forward with you. Like, I will walk with you. And on both sides of the political spectrum, I think we can do that hand in hand if we take care of people's most basic needs. So I see healthcare reform being the first thing, and undoing our unjust and illegal, internationally illegal border policies, what we're doing right now with the cages, but how we're going to reunite over 500 children that we have placed in cages, how we're going to reunite them with their families, I have no idea.
I'm quiet only because I'm trying
I
to
was,
take that all in. Um,
yeah.
it's just a lot, and hence the carbo loading on, it's just a lot to think about because, we as the mothers of the next generation, like, part of my angst and my stress coming from a mother's perspective is what kind of world am I handing over to my children? Did we give them a world that was better than what we have been given? I cannot
Hmm.
say that to be true. And because I cannot say that to be true, I'm just going to keep trying to work internally, work on our own families, because the reality of the situation is there's not much we can do right now. We're still in waiting. Um, you know, not be in denial, perhaps start being more aware of where, to your point, following the muddy trails, being more informed, studying history. Is history repeating ourselves? Like, what are we going to do? And potentially teaching that to our children so that maybe when they inherit it, they can, fix the brokenness that we gave them. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but for right now, I'm going to continue being glued to the end of my seat. I am so thankful that Rania is feeling better. Um,
Thank you.
we're still waiting for Arizona. I'm going to keep waiting for Arizona
Hmm.
and Nevada, apparently. Who knew
But all eyes
Nevada
are
was
on
going to be
Georgia right
such a big
now.
thing?
So
Yeah, but all eyes are on Georgia right now.
all eyes on
Oh, that
Georgia.
song. I have to go. We should all eyes on Georgia. And I just have to say,
It's on our
it's in
stories right
God's
now.
hands at this point. Yeah, it's in God's
Yeah.
hands. That's
Yeah.
all we can do.
As Dr.
God's
Hoden said
hands.
last week, man proposes, God disposes. So there's really nothing we can do
Ooh,
except
I
pray
love
for our
that.
country, which is what
Mm-mm.
all of us are doing right now. And inshallah khair, may there be
Mhm.
good. And, we will continue working on our denial and working on rebuilding trust with our neighbors and our friends, and do what we do right here, which is let's talk about our POV, our point of view, so that other people can see we're not the enemy. Like, one of the accidental jobs that we're fulfilling through our podcast is giving da'wah or giving information about our religion to people where they're seeing that we're having the same conversations. We have the same concerns that every other American does, more so because our security not only in this nation, but in this world is at stake. So, if nothing
Yeah.
else, make prayer, continue to build bridges, and, we'll keep talking. And I guess everybody will tune in next week for anger and find out why we're so angry at the very preliminary and I think lowballed number. 35% of Muslim voters in America voted differently than Zayba and I did. And we just want to know where that 35% came from. So stay tuned for next week's part 2, Election 2020, which is going to be titled Anger, even though we come from a place of non-judgment. So we're just trying to study it.
You can be non-judgmental and still feeling, because I'm trying to understand where that point of view
Yes.
is coming from, because potentially they can have legitimate reasons. I'm trying to understand where they are. So inshallah,
Mhm.
if you are listening to this and you want to come and let us know, DM us, private message us on Facebook, because I want to
We're not going to out
understand
you.
where you're coming from. No. Unless you want to be outed.
Yeah.
Some people want to do that.
Yeah.
But until next time, inshallah, we're going to get the results sometime within the next 24, 48 hours. So let's just keep focusing on our denial and working towards, more accountability and information and go from there. That's all we can do. Until
All right.
next time, everybody.
Exactly.
Assalamu
Assalamu
alaikum.
alaikum.
Thank you for watching this episode of Momming While Muslim, brought to you by 786 Cosmetics. Our halal nail polishes are also certified vegan and cruelty-free by PETA.